I like to make them laugh first, and then
beat
them over the head.
And that's probably a very good way of doing it.
Yeah, they're defenseless.
Sherman Alexie is a well-known American author who was born on the Spokane Indian Reservation in 1966. He grew up on the reservation and attended Gonzaga and Washington State universities after high school. He has gone on to write 10 collections of poetry, 4 novels, 3 short stories, and 3 film scripts, along with directing 1. He's also in high demand as a public speaker and part-time comedian. Sherman's work is very heavily influenced by his Native American roots and life on the reservation as a child.
I was small. I grew up on the Spokane Indian Reservation, a town called Wapanet, Washington, in eastern Washington State, right on the Idaho-Washington border. So I'm a res kid. I can still talk that way when I want to.
When you want to.
Yeah, so, and I grew up in a family, a fairly large family. We're Catholic and Indian, so guilt squared. And so there are 3 brothers, 3 sisters. My dad was the Catholic. My mom was sort of a Protestant Assembly of God's traditionalist, Spokane, anti-Catholic, agnostic, atheist, pantheistic, Jesuit matriarch. So it was quite diverse. But my dad, more than Catholic, worshiped basketball. So George Mikan was his pope. So that's where I grew up.
So how did this mix of ethnicities, religions, small towns, eastern Washington end up shaping your artistic career?
Well, I think what it prepared me for was to always be the outsider on American culture. In some sense, I was an outsider on my reservation because I was immediately interested in all sorts of things people around me weren't. I was reading very young, reading literature very young, Steinbeck and Shakespeare and poetry and Pound and Eliot and Keats and Yeats and sort of was looking that way from a very early age. Part of that has to do with my dad was a serious reader. He was a genre reader. I mean, I was the world's youngest JFK conspiracy theorist, get my little Legos out and do Dealey Plaza and have a Weeble for JFK, back and to the left, back and to the left. And, but because I didn't fit in there, and because I didn't fit in the white world either, and I was always observing it. My reservation, unlike a lot of reservations, especially here in Southern California, is very much a monoculture. About 97% of the people who live on the Spokane Indian Reservation are Indian, and about 70% of those Indians are Spokane Indians. So it was a monoculture, and so I was always looking at the outside world, not a part of it, looking. And so in some sense, it prepared me to always be a witness to the various felonies and misdemeanors of American life.
The Spokane tribe, whose name translates to Children of the Sun, has long inhabited the Spokane River area. Traditionally, they're a hunter-gatherer society. The Colville, Flathead, and Calypso tribes also inhabited the Spokane's area. There were 3 bands of Spokanes that lived along the Spokane River. The Spokane Falls serviced as the tribe's tribal center of fishing and trade. The nuclear family was the basic unit of Spokane culture. Spokane's spiritual life was based on the worship of the Great Spirit. It was a similar religion to other native tribes and involved the worship of nature. By the 1400s, the Spokane had developed permanent winter housing. The buildings were made of wood and were most likely influenced by the coastal cultures of Washington and Oregon. During the 1700s, Plains Indians started to have a greater influence on Spokane life, including the introduction of the horse. It was at this time that white missionaries began to infiltrate Spokane culture. By the 1860s, white homesteaders were pushing the Spokane off their land. In 1877, the Lower Spokane agreed to relocate to what would become the Spokane Reservation. In 1887, the Upper and Middle Spokane agreed to move to the Flathead and Coeur d'Alene Reservation. It was in this original Spokane reservation that Sherman Alexie was born and raised.
And it's not just Indians either. I mean, every novel's about identity. What does Salman Rushdie say? There are two stories: the story of home and the story of leaving home. That's all. That's all that exists in the world. And every novel, every poem, every movie is about that. And I just have an Indian spin on it, and a Spokane Indian spin at that.
Right. Well,
Audience for literature in this country is in fact, for books, period, is about 70% middle-class white women. So, you know, we're all talking to middle-class white women. That's our job. So, you know, that's my audience.
no, but on one set, but in one.